Blessings and welcome to another episode of Black Mental Health Matters. Our mission here is to encourage open dialogue around mental health among Black communities, and we truly appreciate you for tuning in. I am your host, Stephanie Jones, founder and CEO of Sailor Mindset, and I am a therapist and a mindfulness life coach. Today, we have a special treat for you. We have the pleasure of speaking with our guest, Terri Floyd, who is a behavioral scientist, as we discuss the topic of suicide prevention in the workplace. Who's really at risk? We will unpack all of this in just a moment. Hey, if you're just tuning in, this is Black Mental Health Matters, and today we'll be talking about suicide prevention in the workplace. Who's really at risk? I'm going to bring up our guests today, and then we're going to jump right into the topic. Hello, Terri.
Hello, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I am wonderful.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for being our guest today. We cannot wait to hear your insight and your wisdom on this topic. I'm going to give you a few moments to just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and then we're going to get into some of those questions.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Terri Floyd. Well, first, I'll say I'm excited to be here and good morning, everyone. My name is Terri Floyd. I am a behavioral scientist, a published author, a mental health educator, and a mindset coach. I'm the founder and CEO of TF Solutions Center, where that is a educational consulting firm, as well as the founder and CEO of the Know to Thrive Collaborative, a coaching and consulting boutique firm where our mission is to inspire, uplift, and empower others. And I'm excited to be here.
Love it. Come on. Yes to all of that. That is so awesome and amazing. So, as you know, we're going to be talking about suicide prevention in the workplace.
Mhm.
And behind stage, we had some good conversation and we're just flowing right into that. So, I'm going to ask the first question just to get us started. We might veer off and come back and go to many different topics, but it'll all be surrounded along this.
Okay.
All right. So, first question is, what is the connection between suicide and the workplace? And please speak from a professional and personal lens.
Absolutely. The connection between suicide and the workplace, when we think of it just individually, when it comes to suicide and the risk factors that play a part, of course, you have the non workplace risk factors that includes changes or transitions in the individual's life or in the person's life. It could be divorce, it could be relationship issues, could be issues that are dealing with their children, as well as medical concerns or issues or news that they received. with even thinking about the having the fear as well as job loss or unemployment that can play a
Mm.
part with the non-workspace or non-workplace. But then when you add on top of that the suicide in the workplace, that could be low job security where you're working in a space but not really feeling secure in your role. It could be workplace bullying where you're not feeling or you have supervisors, management, or even co-workers, your peers that are causing stress or applying too much pressure on you or laying too many responsibilities on you, and you don't really feel like that you have the support and access to available resources. It could be that you are a minority in this space where while you feel like that, okay, we're supposed to be a team, but yet I look different from everyone else and
Mhm.
I'm alone. Also, when it comes to thinking about the different type of role or career that an individual has, sometimes when you're in the space where you're a the first trauma responder or a first emergency responder, when we think about police officers, firefighters, even those that are in the mental or the medical profession, even mental health profession, where we're not able to have that outlet. So once we leave work and we don't know how to kind of release and let that go and separate to have our workspace and our home space, and so that also can be a lot, as well as the stress with work. It's people those that are in leadership, so they don't know how to leave their work at work and
Right.
home at home, and sometimes you're unable to do that depending on the type of work that you're in. I know in a previous role I was a director of a nonprofit that dealt with a lot of trauma, and so it was hard for me to be able to kind of separate because there were a lot of times that I was at work in a lot of meetings. So I wasn't able to kind of do my day to day
Yep.
or complete my checklist at
Yep.
work. So I brought it home. And so that also played a part in impacting kind of like the dynamic at home. Or even working from home, because if
Oh,
you're working from home all the time, then it's like now my sacred space where I'm supposed to be at home to relax is also the workplace. And
exactly.
so they also can put stressor where you're unable to have those boundaries and a balance, that work life balance that is necessary and needed.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on so many things. My mind is like, ooh, it's so true. There has to be some type of balance and a good balance. Like, maybe it won't even be a happy medium because sometimes we don't want to say no to work, right? If
Right, right.
you're gonna always want to work. Setting
Yes.
those boundaries is so, so, so important.
Mhm.
So you talked about working from home, which makes me think of the pandemic
Right,
immediately, right? Now,
right.
anyone who says work from home, I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
did you start this in the pandemic and so forth and so on?
Yeah.
I think it's really good for us to talk about what the pandemic did
Mhm.
to us and
Mhm.
how it contributes to this increase that we're seeing, with suicide in conjunction with our jobs and
Mhm.
how it makes us feel a certain way. And then I want to talk about the balance or whose responsibility is it to make sure that employees are well? Is it
Mhm.
the employer who should be speaking up? Or is
Mhm.
it the employee who should be setting the boundaries? Like, we're going to get into all that too. But let's talk about the pandemic and how it flowed into so many different things.
Yes, with the pandemic, a lot of things, like on top of kind of what I already highlighted in regards to the non-workplace suicide risk factors and stressors, as well as inside the workplace. So you now not only have the fears or stresses about job security, but also now death. Death is, of course, we know death is around. So, but it was increased and highlighted
Yeah.
during the pandemic. We focused on death, talked about the numbers, talked about the toll of things that were taking place. And then you have individuals that were used to being at work because that was like their way of their gateway. Some individuals had only the support when it comes to work. And so now, when we're moving into this space of now we have to isolate or we're not able to interact with individuals, we have to keep our distance. We have the social distancing, even if you're in the workspace. Or that also provided a lot of stressor and increased the chances, as well as individuals that are the frontline workers. And so, while this, I know my role is important. This is a job that I once enjoyed doing because
Mm,
I'm saving lives, I'm helping individuals, but now I'm truly on the front line where my life is in danger. So I have to separate. I'm not able to be with my family, not really able to go home. This is not what I'm used to, because this is, again, the fear of the unknown. I'm unable to really kind of release the stress, and not really talk about it in the way that I can talk about it, or not only worrying about I can lose my job if I don't go to work, but if I go to work, I could die. And so I'm still, it is like a lose lose situation that is taking place, or that it took place when it came to the pandemic, that heightened, increased everything that was just what you already were dealing with, personal lives, and now it's like the pandemic on top of everything else. So that increased a much greater stressor, and increased the risk of suicide, as well as knowing how to have that balance in what you need to do to be the best person for yourself, even having the suicide prevention in the workplace, because
Mhm.
that showed that we all were at risk, and that we really didn't have a lot of things that were in place, whether it was policies, procedures, everything kind of was under that limelight, or under that magnifying glass, to show that, like, there are some holes here and we need to figure out how to work this out. A lot of spaces that were in space, or in the workplace, they realized that they could move to remote, and
Yes.
so somewhat it was beneficial. But then at
Mhm.
the same time, we're kind of scrambling around trying to figure it out, because now we're working from home, and now our children at home. So even with that, it's like this whole dynamic, that everything that once was separated is now here in this bubble, and we have collapsed in trying to figure out how to maneuver and navigate in this new normal that we were experiencing within the pandemic.
Yeah, and you spoke about being able to separate home and work life, right? Because that's important.
Yes.
But right, when everything comes in that bubble under that one dome, sometimes it can be very overwhelming. And so
Mhm.
you mentioned something backstage, and I said I was going to mention it. Talk to us about what it looked like for people to put on that mask, right, the physical one, but have to do something else, right? Because
Yes.
when we're talking about suicide, it
Right.
starts with a seed. It's an
Yes.
ideation, it's an idea.
Yes.
And the deeper that seed gets planted in our mind, the longer, the deeper it can take root. And so,
Right.
talk about what happened in the pandemic, which would make people have to reveal and look at themselves. That's a tough pill to swallow.
It
You had
is.
to do it for such an elongated time. Some people didn't like what they saw.
Right, absolutely. Because kind of what we mentioned behind backstage was that in the pandemic, of course, physically, if even if you had to go out, you had to get suited or you put a mask on.
Yep.
And so when we were home or within the isolation in this new normal, a lot of us before the pandemic had on a mask. And so now we had to unmask ourselves. And so with that, we were confronted with self. We were
Mm.
confronted with the things that we liked about ourselves and didn't like about ourselves. A lot of times we could have, like I stated, individuals that had issues at home or around family members, or they were able to remove themselves, they went to work for that kind of that piece. And so with the pandemic, you were unable, like everything was right there. The mirror was right there head on. That showed you what you didn't like about yourself, that showed you what you didn't like about your job, how much you really did not like this job, and you wanted to try to figure out and navigate, or what can you do now, because I've been in this role for this amount of years. I don't really like this. I've been with my spouse this amount of years. I don't really like that person. I love my children, but I really don't like them as much as I thought that I did. Or even I'm not a good of a parent that I thought that I was. And that was one of the things that I even had to confront within myself, that being a parent, a single parent at that, but there were areas and holes that I was looking at the daycare to focus on while I worked. And then I
Mm.
only had a little short amount of time with my son, that
Wow.
we eat a little bit. All right, you play, time to go to bed, get you up, go to daycare. I'm at work, I'm cool. But now he's here all the time. And what am I doing to actually be that nurturing parent that's needed to help with his development and his growth? And why am I getting so irritated? Because he's just being a child and doing what a child does.
Right.
So yeah, that was a lot to unpack, to like see ourselves in our truest authentic self, because a lot of times before the pandemic we had that mask on, and now we had to truly reveal who we really are, and we were confronted with if I really like that person or not.
Yeah, big time. And
Yeah.
a lot of us really realized that we didn't like the person that we saw.
Right.
So there were many different options that you can have. You can try to work on yourself, or you could try to improve yourself,
Yes.
or you can say, I don't want to exist anymore and I don't want to be here. And
Right.
a lot of people did that as well. When you
Yes.
tie yourself into your career, right, it
Mhm.
defines you. And in America, a lot of people, do that. You say, hey, what do? You say your career. I
Right.
mean, immediately.
Yes.
You don't list anything else. You list your career and who you are. And so
Mhm.
a lot of our identity is intertwined in that. And so that makes it very difficult to separate it. Or
Yes.
when it's smushed too much together, it's an overload, right? To the
Yes.
already mentally fragile, it's an
Yes.
overload.
Yes.
Now, I want to circle back a little bit because you did talk about, what employers could offer and do, and it made us evaluate. Maybe we're not doing enough.
Right.
Anyone who has employees, anyone who, is in charge of people and making sure that they're okay. Mentally well people work the best,
Right.
right? So
Right.
that's where I want to flow next. Are employers doing enough to assist employees who are struggling with mental health issues, the ones that were revealed after the pandemic and the ones that were already occurring before?
Right. And that's a good question, a really good question. One thing that I definitely can think that even in with employers, um, like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, it's definitely important that there's areas that we always can improve on, right? Um, and what we should do, or what employers should do and workplaces should do, is to continuously have like the evaluation to kind of
Mm,
evaluate how things are working.
yeah.
We always do the performance reviews and everything. So why not, when you're testing or checking out your employees to see that they're meeting their metrics, that they're doing what they're required to do. Also pay attention to the areas that may be struggling in productivity.
Yes.
Pay attention to the employee turnover to see what is causing this to happen in this specific area. Most of the time, it is something that is related to the mental health in that workplace. If there's individuals that are leaving, if there's a high turnover rate, if there's individuals that are calling in, and you can of course look at that. That don't just use it to attack the employees, but look to see what are we doing, what the culture of our organization is doing to promote the mental wellness, to make sure that we have the awareness and the mindfulness of our employees, not just looking at them as numbers to get our products, or make sure the services that we provide are being facilitated or distributed properly. But make sure that those individuals in their workplace, your employees, that you will look at them as individuals that
Mhm.
also too have lives outside of the workspace. And so if they don't have this piece, or if there are things that are going on outside the home that can also, or inside the home that they're bringing to work, it impacts the productivity. And I think that it's important that one of the things in regards to like employers in the workplace is to make sure that they understand how mental health impacts their employees. Have
Mm.
that conversation, have that open communication. um I know there's in the recent, especially when it comes to the pandemic and even like the opioid epidemic or even substance abuse, so you have the employee assistance program, so the EAPs that are now, they're kind of promoting that and letting know that these resources are available to you. There's also spaces where now they're also getting suicide prevention training in the workplace, crisis prevention training. I think that's definitely important to have the leadership in those spaces, to have the awareness, to have the understanding, as well as being comfortable with having those conversations. While you may think that you have, okay, well, we have the EAP resources, but your employees don't even really know where to access it or how to access it, there's always needing to be important conversations to highlight, to let those individuals know, to let the employees know that, look, we care about your mental health. We're even promoting and telling you all to take mental health days, because we know, even when it, I'm gonna go back a little bit to the pandemic, some companies realized that a lot of the roles and positions that they had in place that were requiring to be in an office could be done at home. And they realized when individuals were at home and were able to work from home, productivity went up. And why is that? Because they were in a safe space where they felt comfortable to do their job and not be micromanaged, not have coworkers that they really didn't get along with. And so you were in your space to focus and do your job. And
And we
so,
had unlimited snacks.
yes,
Okay, that's key.
yes,
That's key.
exactly. And so having that, being that comfortability or being comfortable in that space helped to show that individuals, when even when they were on Zoom, smiling and happy, like, hey, I can talk to you now because I am
Right.
in the comfortness of my own home to
Yes.
do this work. And a lot of times, even when there were individuals that took off from work or maybe needed to leave early, they realized they got more working time or longer work hours with individuals that were working at home. Now, of course, you still need to have that work life balance, but the productivity increased when it came to individuals that were moved or transitioned to the remote workers. So just paying attention to that and kind of tying in and having the understanding about mental health and having that conversation and knowing about mental wellness, even incorporating, encouraging your employees to take breaks. I
Mm.
know my current employer that I work for, that is one of the things that I appreciate. And this is going into my second year working with them, where they truly promote and heavily promote about the importance of mental health. My department alone, like we talk about meditation, they always sharing things, not just waiting on certain times of the year, but always talking about mental health, talking about the importance of taking time for you, taking breaks needed. Get yourself up and go away. Go outside, enjoy some vitamin D if you can, or walk around, even if it's needed, walk around in your home. But just the importance of having that assistance with helping with those mental health issues and knowing that those resources are available. But I think it definitely plays a part with both. Employers need to have the awareness, they need to pay attention, be mindful, and make sure that their leadership is on board to understand and get the proper mental health training, making that a requirement.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, you've covered so much, and it's so thought provoking, and we really need it. And I think a lot of companies would benefit from really hearing this. So viewers, look, share this out. Look, I mean, it might be a little shady if you share this with your boss or your CEO, because you're like, what are you trying to say? But in all seriousness, companies need to hear this.
Yes.
Terry, when you were talking about doing the performance review, but like a
Mhm.
mental health review, I'm
Mhm.
like, that needs to be a thing. You're
Yes.
checking productivity of work. Were you able to complete these projects and
Mhm.
workflow and all this project management and stuff?
Mhm.
The mind of the person that you're talking to is crumbling, it's falling down, is not well.
Right.
And so I do want to talk about from that, right, where
Mhm.
our employers can be asking us a lot of things to do.
Mhm.
Can we talk about the responsibility that we have to have proper boundaries in place so
Right.
we're not overloaded, right? And so if we need to take a break, if we need to say, hey, I know we're doing this performance review, or I know you're asking me to do this, but I need the mental health day. I need
Right.
to take a break. I need to sit.
Right.
We sometimes are in a society where we are just told to go, 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 and push,
Yes.
push, 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 push. And so, what does it look like for an employee to have those proper boundaries and to make sure that we're the ones speaking up so that we're not at risk of having a suicidal ideation or actually completing a
Right.
suicide attempt?
Right, right. And that's definitely important. And I agree with you. A lot of times in the workspace, it's definitely difficult. I- I'm not even going to say just in the workspace. Personally, sometimes it's difficult for us to have those boundaries and speak up. I think it's important that even in personal as well as in the professional world, to know that saying no is a complete sentence, and it's definitely important to know when you have kind of reached that limit. It's
Mhm.
important to also be able to advocate for yourself by knowing when to say no, or to have those boundaries, to see like, okay, if this is if I'm on a team, is there ways that I can does this just solely require for me to do this, or can this project or these duties be separated and divided into other people that can assist and help? I think it's definitely important to When you know that it's time for you to take that break, take the vacation, take the
Yes.
PTO, take the sick day. If you need it, and your boss, it seems to feel like that it's a lot on you, have that discussion. Sometimes it's hard to have that conversation when it comes to your leadership, but if you have leave, utilize it. The PTO is personal time off. You do not have to tell them why you're taking that time off, because that is your time. And so, and even in their spaces, and there's some organizations, some areas where they still kind of want to have something, they can, by law, they can't really ask those questions, especially when it's now PTO. If there's things that if they require an exit in regards to if it's still in their vacation or sick time, if they have it separated like that, just tell them what it is. Like, I'm feeling burnt out. And if I do not take a day or two off, then my productivity, nothing is really going to happen. So if you want me to be my best, if you don't want the productivity to be at the level that it should be, then you will trust in me and allow me that time to take that break. Because the longer that I work here, the harder it is for me to produce and provide the quality work that is necessary and required. And so sometimes, even if you, once you stated like that, they're like, you know what, you're right. What can we do to take this off of you? Or what can we do to kind of lessen your workload at that moment? A lot of times we feel pressure, and I know even with me, of course, a lot of times being a minority in the workspace is like we are always have to kind of prove ourselves and work 10 times as hard and do everything right, because they're looking at us and we're a minority in this space. But closed mouths don't get fed. Sometimes you may it's is it I look at it now, the older I get, and now becoming a parent, as well as in the pandemic. One
Mhm.
thing that taught me is if I'm no longer here, the job is still going to get done, regardless if I take off, if they fire me, or if I die today. Somebody will learn how to do the job, and the job will.
Absolutely.
And so I knew how to now put me first and make sure that mentally, physically, emotionally, that I'm in the space that I need to be to do the
Yes.
best job that I can. And so
Yes.
that's one of the boundaries that I looked at, that I'm want to live, but I also don't want to be stressed and not enjoying life. And life is short. We don't know when it's our last time. And so by putting those boundaries in place, we're able to help me to understand and have that work-life balance. And so saying no, that was one of the things. And even knowing that, even when we state about the multitasking, that's not really a thing, because you can't really focus on multiple things
You can't.
at the same time,
You can't.
because one area you're going to focus on more than others. That quality of work, the one that you're focusing on, is going to be higher compared to the others. And so I also try to be as organized as possible and having checklists, and even comparing like the different type of day-to-day duties that I was doing to see, okay, this can be grouped here, let me focus on this, and then kind of time chunk what I was going to focus on and spend time on. By having those boundaries, by having that open communication and speaking up, and knowing when enough was enough, knowing when I'm like, all right, I need to reset it, I need to refocus. That's how I was able, and I encourage others to have that boundary in the workspace and not be stressed or feel pressured that you cannot speak up. Because while it's the employer's job to inform us, to let us know about the mental wellness, to know about the resources that are available for us, it's also our job to speak up, to let them know what's going on. Because the only way that the employer and the culture can get better is if everyone has to speak up. And if you feel that there's a space that they still need to work on, be willing to be that changed and speak up. Which sometimes it could be a little bit difficult for others, but if you find someone that you trust, even if that's talking to individuals in a specific role, to
Mhm.
see if they can be your, because a lot of times now they have like what is it, the employee committee, or where you go talk to that person, and they're kind of like the spokesperson for the overall employees within that area and department.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely important to speak up and let your voice be heard, or find someone that you can trust and rely on to utilize their mouthpiece to kind of speak on your behalf.
Absolutely. I mean, viewers, I hope you're picking up all these gems that are being dropped. I mean, it's really amazing and awesome. And I'm even here like, yes, absolutely. Just what you were finishing up saying kind of flows into the next question. And for those who have just tuned in, you are with the Black Mental Health Network, and we are here and we are bringing light and shedding light on suicide prevention in the workplace. What's really at risk, or who's really at risk? We know that it's happening. We know what's going on. So we want to be talking about this. We're not going to shy away from these taboo topics. The more we bring light to them, the more that we are able to help and assist. So
Mhm.
you were speaking and kind of ending up your last statement, and it really makes me want to ask this question, right? How can employees who feel like they're struggling with suicidal ideations, and I'll say suicidal ideations, but also any mental health disparities,
Mhm.
know who to reach out to? You were kind of hinting on that.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through like a little bit more of that, right? Expound on that. Who should they speak to? And you could even talk about the nervousness or the embarrassment that people might feel. How do we push through that to make sure that we're reaching out so we're okay?
Um, that is this definitely a good question. I feel like if the well, I'll say use kind of two spaces or to answer this question in two different ways.
Sure.
When the employer provides that space of having the open conversation or communication about mental health, the importance of the mental health, the importance of the mental wellness, that kind of opens the door where it's a little bit more easier to converse or talk
Sure.
to individuals about things that you're dealing with. And so if the employers are doing kind of their part to kind of highlight to let everyone know where those resources are available, that's definitely key. And so that would kind of take a little bit of the nervousness out,
Mm,
and it still include that confidentiality where you're like, I'm not being judged, I'm getting the help that I need, I'm
right.
able to communicate and talk to individuals that are available, or they have the resources to share, to get me the help that I need. So
Mm,
that's definitely important. That's why I encourage that it definitely takes both. And it's important for the employers to let their employees know about these resources and have those important conversations to share. Now, as far as on the other end, where it's maybe they kind of touch on a little bit, they may have highlighted it at orientation, like, oh, this is EAP and da da da, and then that's it. I think it's still important to, if you can talk to your direct supervisor,
mhm.
it's important to have those conversations. I know now, especially when it comes to the performance reviews, where you have those one-on-ones with your not your doctor, with your supervisor or your manager, and with that, utilize sometimes that space. Maybe not going too transparent about your personal life, but just letting them know, hey, this is what's going on. I'm feeling a lot of pressure, feeling stress. I'm feeling burnt out. Is there, and then instead of, even if you don't want to kind of directly go into kind of what you're dealing with, just ask what procedures or policies are in place for individuals that are struggling mentally. um and so that kind of creates the conversation again, where if the supervisor should know and have the awareness of the resources, but if they don't, they can get those, research that and get that information to you. It's still kind of protecting your confidentiality,
It is.
protecting yourself from not really going in depth about truly what's going on, and also allowing you to see if the supervisor or managers truly care about their employees. Because this, while we're in this workspace, while we when we go on interviews, we're interviewing to be our best selves, and of course the employers are also sharing great news and information about them, or about why it's so great to work here. But you are creating this space or asking those questions so they can give you the resources that's necessary and needed. And they can also show if there's areas I'm like, we don't really have a space that talks about this. What can we do to get our employees the help that they need? By talking to the supervisor or manager, asking that question, or if you have a good relationship with them, let them know.
Mm,
Again, just saying, I feel overwhelmed. Is there a way that I can work with someone else, or if I can have a a peer or a coworker that we kind of do like a buddy thing where I'm not on, like I'm not the only one that's taking on this task and load, but we can have someone that knows how to do it if I'm not here. And
Yeah.
by also creating that space of like we're doing um this crosswork where I'm your backup person when you're on vacation or when you need to be off, and then the other person. And so that way you're also not feeling pressure like I can't take off because people are relying on me. And
Hmm.
so if you have that space of like, okay, I want to learn their role, but I also want them to learn my role, then that's not a stressor where you're feeling like I'm obligated and I have to stay here. Because if I'm not here, then I know my emails are going to be out of whack. And sometimes they still may be out of whack, but you know that at least the job can be done with someone else.
Yeah.
If I need to take some time to myself to focus, or to even just regroup. I think that that's important to just have those conversations. But when it comes to the mental health training, I think it's definitely important to have the suicide prevention training in the workplace. That even though that we have this space where we're listening, being an active listener, because sometimes even in conversations, individuals will tell us things indirectly, to let us know that something isn't right, right? And
I
so
love I
that
love that a lot.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
that could be when you are noticing that a person that Terry was always smiling and happy and now she's kind of closed off and not really talking to anybody. Just checking in. Not asking about work, just saying how you doing today, and actually being intentional about that is definitely important. And I'm still kind of putting that on kind of the employees and or the employers, as well as like your coworkers, but just having that conversation and being comfortable with paying attention and noticing the signs. I think that that's definitely important to create this space of the feeling safe and welcome for all that are in your workspace. And when we can do that, when we can create that culture to have that conversation and share about the importance, and having the concerns and true concerns, then it will be easier for employees that who feel like they're struggling, that they know who to reach out to. Um, so yeah, I just feel like that it's still important that it falls on both
Yeah.
employees and employers, but most importantly in the workplace, it's important for the employers to know like this is what we're doing, this is the resources that we have, even if we're continuing to work to learn, to improve, to make sure that the mental wellness in the workplace is where it needs to be for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. I mean, and it slides right into that next question. I mean, which you've already basically talked about. I really, really think and hear from what you're saying is that we need to bring empathy back to the workplace. We
Yes.
need to bring humanity back to the
Yes.
workplace
Yes.
because we have to realize that we're not robots, we're not machines,
No.
and that we're not AI, right? We're not someone who's just created of wires and metal and things like that. We
Mhm.
have feelings, we have emotions,
Mhm.
and sometimes those things are discombobulated or there's a
Mhm.
chemical imbalance. And when
Yes.
you're dealing with humans, we have to deal with them with humanity.
Their
And
whole
so
self.
the whole entire self,
Yes.
mind, body, soul, we can throw the
Yes.
spirit in there, everything, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Now, to me, it sounds like you're saying it's a balance and of
Mhm.
who shared responsibility,
Right.
but there is an onus for the employer
Mhm.
to have a working knowledge and understanding,
Yeah.
right? So we're talking about the mental health training.
Mhm.
What else can employers do, right? What else can they get themselves into or research or kind of
Mhm.
find something that will help them know how to identify the signs, not just of suicide, right? If you mentioned that, and I love that, Terry. I was like, yes, absolutely. You can see someone's demeanor. If
Yeah.
someone is happy, and no one's going to be happy every day, all day, it doesn't matter
Right.
who you are, right?
Right. Right.
If you notice that for a prolonged time the demeanor has changed, just talk about those certain things, being mindful so they
Mhm.
can do the mental health training. And then what else can employers do, right? You talked about it. What else can you think of that they can do? Because this is helping our community.
Mhm.
that is made up of employers and employees, right?
Right.
So it all
Right.
kind of connects together.
Right. Yeah, I definitely believe and know that mental health training is definitely important. And with that, kind of, it does teach you or highlight how to pay attention to signs, pay attention to their demeanor, pay attention to those small changes, even the things or words that they say, how they say certain things. Um, be like I said, active listening is definitely important. A lot of times, when we're busy, kind of going through our day, we're like, "Hey, how you doing?" But you're not really paying attention and
No.
you're not even taking time to stop to see how that person is actually doing,
Mm.
or even that individual's program is like, "I'm fine," because they know like people not gonna really listen.
Yeah.
But I think it's about being intentional.
Mm.
With again, one-on-one time where it is important that not only when you're having these meetings and having those one-on-one times that you're only talking about work, but
Mm.
also to talk about to give that balance, to ask them how they're like learn your employees their names and if their families. How's your husband John doing? Or how is
Mhm.
your children doing? Or something like that. By you creating that space of the intentionality, where like you said, in providing that empathy, that also can help the employers be mindful of their employees.
Sure.
And then it also creates that space where employees are comfortable with sharing a little bit more about personal things, right? I think it's great that having that open communication to reduce the stigma, and to increase the access of the mental health resources, not just when it's open enrollment, not just
Mm.
when it's time to kind of mention the mental health benefits, but I think promote them frequently,
Yeah.
sending out, we always have these blast emails within our companies, so why not promote newsletters or things talking about what you can do to focus on your mental space or your mental wellness. Take 5 minutes to breathe, or even have sharing meditation scripts. That's a 5 minute thing that you can do while you sitting at your desk, or what you can do when you encourage to go and have those mindful walks. A lot of companies now are promoting about physical health and being physically fit. So what about mental health fitness? What you can do to make sure that your mental health is on point.
Terri!
Mental and physical go hand in hand. That's the whole person, right? And so I think it's important to now we always like drink your water, eat your fruits and vegetables, get your exercise in. What are you doing to be mindful? What about mindful eating? What about going for a mindful walk? What about making sure that you're being intentional to make sure that you're resetting? Teaching individuals to breathe, right?
Wow.
I think it's important to promote the well-being and overall, again, for the culture of the organization, for the employers, by allowing them to have that flexibility in their schedules, by again encouraging, hey, take that PTO. Like, all right, you done this, great job. So now it's time to take off.
Mhm.
Take you some
Yeah.
time to regroup, to reset, to refocus. Um, Even if there are individuals that are still working in the office, bring yoga classes in there, bring meditation classes, bring something that is focused on the well-being and promote that. I just feel like that it's definitely important. Even talking about the importance of sleep and how sleep is necessary and needed for stress reduction. Sleep is necessary and needed for increased productivity.
Yeah.
Just letting your employees know that you care about their well-being overall. Of course, we all know when we go to work, we're the employees, we're expecting a paycheck, and the employers are expecting you to do a job so you
Mm.
can receive that paycheck. But so while we know that that's kind of the ultimate goal of the reason why we're here, also highlight to let them know that you care about their importance of their well-being. Because if they're not at their best mental self, our productivity is going to show and it's going to reflect. Our overall company is going to reflect and show. And so I think that you cannot separate it. You have to be mindful and have that mindfulness to promote the well-being, to promote and share the information about the mental health resources, and not just only at set times. Put that in the plug that in there monthly in a newsletter. If you can't do it weekly, make sure that you have a section that is focusing on the mental wellness of your employees and
Yeah.
what you can do to incorporate and add into your day to day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Man, I'm like, what? We do this big push at our places of employment for physical health, right? At,
Mm-hmm.
at, at my school, we have a challenge where everyone gets together and, you see how many, steps you can clock and
Yep.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what are we doing to make sure we are mentally, physically fit?
Right.
Because if our physical bodies, our actual tangible bodies are great, but our mental bodies are just like down and out of breath, and it's a mess. We're out of shape, mentally, and
Yes.
so we have to do those mental exercises to make sure we're okay.
Yes.
Another thing that I'm picking up from what you're saying is that we are more reactive than proactive.
Yes.
So we can make someone take the time off or go on, FMLA when
Mm-hmm.
something happens or something, explodes inside of us, or there's a
Right.
big mental break.
Right.
But let's be proactive and
Yes.
put that in the newsletter. Do
Yes.
it monthly, right? Not just when it's open enrollment. Like,
Right.
our mental health is a concern all year round.
All year.
And all year round, and depending on your job, that's increased even more. I
Yes.
work with high school students,
Yes.
grades 9 through 12.
Yes.
My,
Mhm.
it's a lot going on, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
then we're burnt out, we're done. If employers are recognizing this, sometimes I think you even have to force people to take time off.
Yep.
Because if you're gonna work, and we could even talk about the mental health implications that happen when you say, I don't want to take off time because I'm gonna disappoint someone. What
Right.
happened in your child? You know what I mean? These are things that are created in
Right.
your childhood. You want to impress everyone. You want to
People
make everyone
pleasing.
happy. You want to people please. Come on, Terry. You
Yes.
want to people please. So you say, I'm going to work. I'm going to do all this. And your physical and mental and spiritual body is like, can you stop? Please, I need a
Right.
break. And we're
Right.
going. So I love that. It
Yeah.
is a shared responsibility.
It is.
And I also love that you said it is really important for employers to know the inner workings of who they have working for them.
Mm-hmm.
Know the kid's name, the pet
Mm-hmm.
name if they have one, the
Mm-hmm.
spouses or the partner's name. Know what they like. Oh, I know you had a baseball tournament. I know you had a bowling
Yes.
tournament coming up. How did that go?
Yep.
You know what that helps us do? That helps us recognize that we belong here, that we're plugged in. When you're
Yes.
dealing with suicidal ideations, you isolate yourself.
You
No
do.
one loves me. No
Mm-hmm.
one cares about me.
I
No
don't
one
know.
wants me here. I
Yep.
don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But you have an employer who says you matter. You matter so much that I've learned about your life outside of what I'm paying you to do.
Yes.
That makes me plug in. That's an
Yes.
anchor. When you
Yes.
deal with suicide, it's a lack of an anchor. Where
Mm-hmm.
can I anchor myself to? Who cares about me? Who loves me?
Right.
And because we spend so much time at our jobs,
Mm-hmm.
on our places, at our places of employment,
Mm-hmm.
it is our employer's responsibility to make sure that there's a safe space for us to say, hey, we want you here. This company wouldn't be the same without you, right?
Right.
You mentioned that too.
Yep.
Someone passes away next week, someone else is
Yep.
in the position.
Yep.
Let's make people believe that we cannot do this without you. We need you here. If you're not here, the company wouldn't be the same.
Right.
And I love what you were saying about the mental health walks and the mindfulness. Well, mindfulness is every single thing. It's just about
Mm-hmm.
awareness and
Yep.
making sure that we are recognizing what's going on. I think my next question would be, what can people do, or how can someone create a peaceful work environment in the midst of a chaotic work environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stressful job. You can't avoid stress at work. It's just going to happen. There's always going to be a deadline. There's always going to be someone requiring something of you. What can someone do to create that space of peace
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of chaos to make sure that they know, ooh, I'm getting overloaded. What can I do before I have to take a drastic step that could actually end my life?
Right, right. That's definitely a good question. And kind of what I touched a little bit earlier in kind of some examples of what I did, even when it comes to boundaries. I think boundaries again is definitely important to create that peaceful work environment. To understand that multitasking is not real, but focus on more so the time chunking, where you allotting yourself that time to focus on that specific thing within, if it's take 1 or 2 hours, focus on that for those 2 hours. Now, of course, if there's things that come up that is needed at that moment, then to kind of set that down and focus on the priority or at that time. But also prioritizing your projects. That's definitely important. That not, of course, you're just like, yep, I want to be. I want to be fast. I want to be quick. I want to be efficient. One thing, and I'm gonna mention this in this with my current employer, my direct manager. He always tells me to it's quality over quantity, because
Mm,
sometimes we can focus on like, I need to push this out. I got to get these projects out quick, 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 quick. But his is like, I'm not focused on that. The work gonna get done. I
yeah.
want you to make sure that you're taking your time to do the quality, providing your quality work. That's your productivity with providing the quality. It's not about how fast you can get things done, because sometimes when we think like, oh, I got this list, I got to check, 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 we're not truly being mindful about the things that we're working on.
That's
And
right.
so there's things that if you're rushing, that you may come back have to do later, and you're adding on top of the other
Mhm.
projects that you need to complete. And so having that mindfulness in the prioritization is definitely important. Also, to create this peaceful work environment, it's important to recognize this self-imposed stress, because
Come
while work
on.
is stressful, it is. I mean, you have people that are calling you asking you about projects, or when you gonna
Yep.
get this done, when will you turn this report in, or you need to change that. That, yes, that does happen. That's work. Dealing with people, interacting with individuals, it's gonna be a little bit stressful.
Yes.
But there are times where we put in the internal stressors where we overload ourselves.
Wow.
We don't have that internal dialogue to say, to even pay attention to know, like, okay, let me take a moment, let me regroup, let me speak up. Even if it's sometimes where you have to take accountability, like, yeah, I added too much on me. This is what I can do right now, and this is what I'm going to do. And
Yes.
so when you can focus and kind of level that out, instead of having those negative thoughts and spiraling into a moment like, oh my goodness, if I don't do this is what's going to happen. You can ask yourself these questions. You can ask, even if you have those negative thoughts that are taking place, um because again, we're sometimes our worst critic, and we always apply too much pressure on ourselves.
Correct.
So you say, are my thoughts based in fact, or are they my own interpretation of circumstances? So when you ask yourself these questions in regards to this midst of a chaotic work environment, the other one, am I assuming the worst possible scenario will occur? And how likely is that really? Because a lot of times the scenarios that we create in our head, they don't happen. We create those. And so we put this extra internal stress on ourselves, because we have created stories or created things that like this, but this could happen, but has it happened yet? And
Mm.
so why do you keep putting that in your mindset that this is what's going to happen? Or you make the assumption of what you see, because what is it? The mirror made objects appear larger than what they are. So
Yes.
outside looking in, we can see somebody over there. We can see silly Sue over there. She lollygag all the time, not doing anything. And you see how they're on her. And so we like, see how they on her. That's how they gonna do me. But is she doing her job? You got to focus on yourself and make sure that if you have not had them on you like that, don't take the assumption that, see what happened to her, that's gonna happen to me again. We're always assuming the worst possible scenario. And also, will the thing that I'm so concerned about right now matter a week from now? Will it matter a month from now? Or will it matter a year from now? That's
Yeah.
another way that we can prioritize things to create this peaceful work environment. Also, creating those boundaries and knowing when this is what I can do, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to get to later on. It's also important to take the breaks, step away from your desk, because research suggests that the work breaks lower your stress levels. Sometimes
Mhm.
people like, oh, I'm a super worker, I'm going to work through my lunch. No, take the lunch, take the break, give yourself that time away to relax. I work from home. So even when I take my lunch break, I know I can go in the kitchen and give me something to eat. Sometimes I just eat, I go outside, I may go walk, or I may go get in my car and just drive around for a few minutes, because I'm like, I need to kind of regroup and get away from work. I
Yeah.
don't even want to just sit on my couch or watch TV. I just need to get out the house right now. And so that is allowing me that space to step away. to give me moments to refocus and to revive my focus and to reset. The breaks are important. I don't know where this work hard. I'm a grind. The only time I'm gonna stop is when I'm there. Okay, well, you're gonna speed up the process on that. You need to allow yourself that time to give your break. Taking breaks is a part of your self-care. We neglect our self-care, and it
Wow.
shows in our work, it shows in our relationships with other people. And so that's important to know this self-care, and to be intentional about it is absolutely important. And that's the way that we can create a peaceful work environment in the midst of a chaotic workspace, because
Mm,
sometimes the workspace is toxic, but we have to be responsible for ourselves, right? We know we're here for a job. We know we're here for this paycheck, because if I don't work, I don't eat. If I don't work, my bills don't won't be getting paid. But until I can get to a space that is a peaceful work environment, I have to create this space for me, because it is my duty and my job to create that space and to advocate for myself. While it is the balance and importance for the employer to
yeah.
provide that workspace, it's still on us to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I want to take a moment to acknowledge some of our viewers who have been commenting and they've been agreeing, saying that this, has been an amazing conversation, and it has, and then suggesting retreats for work and things like that, which is a really good
Yes.
idea as well. And just mentioning that there is a lack of education about mental health, in our employers minds or in their kind of wheelhouse, and they don't know, so it is important for them to know. Just flipping back to what you were saying, though, two things really popped up for me. One, when you mentioned having a peer at work,
Mhm.
not just to check on work things, though. This is professional, things you can check on, but to check on emotional support or to check
Right.
on personal things, right? Sometimes we're in an echo chamber, right? So if we have a peer at work, and if we have a buddy, a work buddy,
Mhm.
that we're checking in about projects and deadlines and things like that, we can also talk to them about what we are thinking about,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
find someone who you know is going to be non-judgmental, it's going to be confidential, and
Mhm.
you're still measuring what you're sharing, but you're just making sure that is what I'm thinking accurate? Because what I mentioned before, the echo chamber, you go and it just echoes back and forth, and you're talking to yourself, and then you're saying this, and yourself is saying this, and it's all one, vacuum, and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Sometimes when we mention something, I'm like, Terry, look, someone said this to me about this project, or I'm just making sure this is okay. Having you to respond back and say, you know what, I see it from a different perspective, really helps to reduce that stress, right?
Absolutely.
Also, sometimes we have the self-fulfilling prophecies. This is what I picked up from what you're saying.
Mhm.
We're looking at silly Sue.
Yep.
She's having everybody looking at her.
Mhm.
If we keep looking at her, we're going to look up and see everybody looking right at us in the same vein, right? We're so
Yep.
focused on someone else and
Mhm.
everyone else's performance
Yep.
that ours starts to fail.
Mhm.
Sometimes we need to have that tunnel vision
Yes.
where I don't need to look at anything else but my workload, and I can still be helpful, or I can
Right.
still say, yes, I can assist with this. But if
Mhm.
my tasks are not get completed, then we are going to have people looking at us. It is so important to make sure that
Mhm.
we're not creating those false scenarios.
Yes.
We have to challenge the thought. That's what mindfulness is too. Challenge that irrational thought. Hold
Yes.
on.
Yes.
What's going on? What are we talking about? We
Right.
don't challenge it with ourselves. We have to find someone else to challenge it with. So
Mhm.
I really, really love that you mentioned that.
Mhm.
This has been such an amazing conversation
Yes,
that I'm
sir.
even going to rewatch and revisit, because it's so helpful and beneficial. We have a responsibility, and we can't just blame our jobs.
Mhm.
Hey, you guys aren't doing this. What are we doing?
Yeah.
You said it. No one's going to take responsibility for our well being better than we can.
Right.
Even if we have to, I play refreshing music at work, right? People
Mhm.
step into the office like, ooh, I like the vibe in here. Making sure to find something, if it's paintings, if it's music, if it's something you need to do, activities, something that we can do to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves at work. Super important. You have put the responsibility, Terry, back in our own hands, right? Our employers should know,
Right.
but what can we do to make sure that we're still at peace, that we're not doing too much? Then you mentioned too about the workload priorities.
Hmm.
Don't wait until the last minute. I mean, if you can just expound about that, right? That's professional stress that
Yes.
we don't have to do. What does it look like for someone to have a good workflow? And I'm not, you're not you're in a space as a, as someone who's talking about how to prevent suicide on the workplace.
Hmm.
But that stress that adds up from maybe not prioritizing what we should. Can you
Right.
talk a bit more about that, please?
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely important because we have to be organized. We have to have that good, because when there's stress, you have that poor management, but you need to, like you said, manage your workload, and know what is within your control,
Yeah.
that what you can and can't do. By you prioritizing, by you looking at the different duties that's required of you, if you can compare and see like, okay, those are similarities, so I can group these together again with that time chunking, it's definitely
Yeah.
important to incorporate and make sure that you are doing what's necessary and needed, but you are prioritizing your projects, you're
Yes.
prioritizing your time. And then when you stick to that time chunking, if you saying that you're only going to lock 2 or 1 hour, or if this only requires 30 minutes, get to that, switch on to something else. If you
Yep.
need to take a 5 minute break in between, do that, and now shift that focus to get on to the next role or the next thing that's required of you.
Yep.
It's important to hold yourself accountable. If you need to have set alarms on your calendar for work or even on your phone, because we always have our phones with us, depending on the type of work that you do. But you need to make sure that you are being intentional and being organized to complete the task, and not waiting until the last minute and procrastinating. And now you're stressed out because they're asking you what happened to this report. Why wasn't it not sent? You said you was gonna send it early this morning, and here we are at 3 p.m. You got 30 minutes left before your day work shift is over. So it's definitely important to not procrastinate, but prioritize and be intentional with the time chunking and making sure that you are managing your workload well.
So important. Like that is a big way to reduce that stress at work. Because okay, you have the overload, your plate is full,
Mm-hmm.
right? You haven't let the boundaries be established, or you haven't kept the boundaries, and so we're like, okay, our plate is now full.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're stressed. Now we feel like management is coming down on us. We don't have support at work.
Right.
We don't feel a reason to exist anymore. We're realizing that there are things that are going to be happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
All that is the buildup.
Yeah.
When you look at someone who has attempted suicide or has actually been successful at it, you
Mm-hmm.
can read it like a book. There are steps that happen. So we're trying to proactively intercept the steps before it gets to the place
Right.
that you can't return from, right? So we want to be aware of what's going on in ourselves
Mm-hmm.
as employers and employees and make sure that we're okay. Before we end today, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity, Terri, to provide people with your socials.
Yes.
How do we reach you? If you have anything coming up, please share. I'm sure people are going to want to connect with you. I've already mentioned, let's stay connected. You're a wealth of knowledge and you say things in such a practical way that it's like, wait, you've heard it all the time, but never in a way that really makes sense with this. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for that. Please share how people can reach you. How do we connect with you? How do we stay connected and hear more gems so we can just consume and be okay?
Absolutely. And thank you for that opportunity. It's been a pleasure talking with you and having this important conversation. Those that are interested, you can find or follow me on LinkedIn. My name is Terri Floyd, MS, on LinkedIn, as well as I do have social media pages on Facebook. It is TF Solutions Center, as well as the Note to Thrive Collaborative Coaching and Consulting. On Instagram, I am the Know to Thrive Collaborative, as well as my main page where you'll get all of the information and access to my different pages is T Flow Speaks, or T Floyd Speaks. Yeah, TEEFLOYD Speaks, all one word together on Instagram. And I do have some upcoming events, speaking opportunities that will be virtual, and you can find those on my Facebook and social media outlets, as well as on LinkedIn as well. So I'm looking forward to connecting and collaborating with those that are interested. And if you have questions and want to continue this conversation, I'm welcome to do or to have that discussion with you as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Seriously, this has been an amazing conversation. And viewers, I hope that you were able to grab, well, I know, I'm not hoping, I know you were able to grab some things based on comments that we saw and all the likes and the hearts and things like that. We really know that this has been a beneficial conversation. Thank you for tuning in. We
Yeah.
were talking about suicide prevention in the workplace, who's really at risk. We talked about who's at risk, the responsibilities that people have. Please check out next week's episode. You'll have to tune in to see what it is, but thank you for joining us here at Black Mental Health Matters. You matter to us, right?
Um,
And so we want to make sure that you know that you matter, and we're giving you practical things to apply to your life every day. We're not just working out physically, but we're also working out mentally. You can find out more about our organization by visiting bmhm.org. I'll say that again, bmhm.org. You can find today's episode and you can connect with us and be part of the team, right? We want you to join us, collaborate with us, and work with us and support the cause. You matter, you're important, and we thank you for tuning in. Until next week, have an amazing rest of your day. Terri, thank you again
Thank
so
you.
much for just dropping your insight and wisdom. We really appreciate it.
Thank
Have an
you.
awesome rest of your day. Bye, everyone.